Hiring an advisor isn't about hiring somebody you like. It's about protecting the plan that you've built and everything that you've worked so hard for, not to mention the people that are relying on the plan. As advisors working with numerous high net worth families and thinking about what's involved in hiring an advisor, there are a few things to think about. The most important is knowing the right questions to ask. As licensed advisors, we've worked with a lot of high net worth families who have transitioned from one firm to another. So we've seen some of the pros, some of the cons, some of the things that you should be thinking about. Today, you're going to see how the right questions to ask can help you in this process. It's going to reveal if somebody's truly on your side of the table and truly able to help, and it's going to flesh out some people that may not be the proper advisor for you.
Are they equipped to lead your family through all the changes that are imminent?
Right. And thinking about, are these advisors that are going to do quarterly review meetings, or are these clients that are going to solve your problems and advise you and your family for decades to come? So we're talking about 5 questions you can ask on how to do this.
We often use the term high net worth. We should really define our definition of high net worth, and that's families with $1 to $20 million of investable assets.
And that leads to a number of different issues. It could be estate planning issues, it could be tax issues, but there are things that you need to be thinking about.
It's always tax issues.
Oftentimes, wealthy families stay with an advisor largely because of familiarity. They may not be confident in that, and the thought of switching is something that's really, really painful to them, even though it may be the right decision for them for the future.
It's easier to not switch, for sure. That doesn't mean easy is rarely the best, provides the best outcome.
Right, but the easy decision is rarely the best decision. So when you think about what's in it for you and what's most important, it's somebody that's going to provide a level of care, a level of advice, a level of decision making that you may not have elsewhere.
I find that asking them to think about things that they haven't thought of before leads to much better outcomes.
Yeah. I mean, the thought of
and that's our job.
Right. And the thought of somebody saying, boy, I never thought of that, validates what we've done. So it's a really important decision. And I think the viewer needs to think about is, how do I transition from somebody that may be a portfolio constructionist giving me investment recommendations to something more? Well, why? Why would you ask that? Well, because the consequences of making a mistake can be really impactful, not only for you and for your family.
And as you get later on in your investing life, as you approach retirement, the mistakes are catastrophic potentially. You can make mistakes when you're younger. As you're approaching retirement, you can't.
Well, and don't forget too that the mistakes are rarely immediate. Rarely do you make a mistake and realize it tomorrow. You often realize it 5 and 10 and 15 years down the road. So again, knowing the right people to know the right questions to ask are really, really important.
This video is for educational purposes only. Always consult qualified professionals before making any legal, tax, or investment decisions.
So here's a couple of fun facts. Capgemini in 2025 did a report. 81% of the next generation of clients, meaning clients' children, are planning not to stay with their advisor.
81% of anything is eye-opening. Yeah, so we got to talk about the reasons why it's that high.
Yeah, and I think the reality in how you answer that question or read into that question is that we don't think advisors are prepared to handle the next generation, right? And I think when you look at the families, the stakes are high.
So at the end of the day, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work for the client. It's a lot of work for the advisor. And not a lot of people are willing to commit the hard work that it takes to create better outcomes.
So I think as we go through this video, we're going to talk about stress testing, not only your advisor, but the decision, and doing so with confidence. So when we look at what we call wealth management, and again, for the viewer to start thinking about the approach we're taking here, there are financial advisors and there are wealth managers. We're going to speak from the mindset of the wealth manager. And when we talk from the mindset of the wealth manager, there are 5 key areas that the surveys say are what interests clients. So obviously one is portfolio management, and that could include all types of different investments. It could include stocks and bonds, but it could include a lot of other different things.
And everybody is equipped to provide that advice.
Correct.
That's table stakes in our business.
It seems to be becoming more and more commoditized, so we don't think that's a differentiator. How about this? How about tax mitigation? How do we what we say, lower your lifetime income tax bill? Is that something that's important to you?
In a world where you can make a great case that taxes are on sale, they're at levels that are not almost as low as they've ever been in history.
Right, and that's a whole other set of issues. Next one, wealth transfer. They want their assets to pass efficiently on, whether it's the next generation or to charity or to whomever. And the other thing that I don't think is really thought of and really discussed enough are the values. How do you transfer your values on to the next generation, sort of like our father did with us?
If you don't talk about it, it doesn't just happen.
Right. That goes to the family meetings that we've talked about. Wealth protection. We live in a litigious society. So how do we try to protect your wealth? And whatever that may be, whether it's through insurance or titling or LLCs, there's a gazillion different ways to do it. And then finally, charitable giving. And people who have had success, like most of our viewers, want to give back, and they want to pass those values on to the children to say how fortunate they've been and to provide some purpose for them.
And in a lot of cases, they don't know how to give or what techniques allow them to give, really painlessly financially.
So let's talk about the 5 questions to ask. And every proactive family should be asking somebody and or themselves before they entrust their future. So the first one, what should I be looking for in an advisor? Before you know what you're looking for, you have to know what's available. So go ahead, what are the 2 types of advisors?
Well, you just talked about it a few minutes ago, investment only, where they're going to give you financial advice as to what to do with your money at this point in time. And then there's the true wealth management advisors, which, again, you laid out what the definition of wealth management is, and those advisors that execute a game plan accordingly.
So when we talk about investing is the easy part, the reason we talk about investing being the easy part, because it's fairly simple to build a portfolio for somebody.
I always say, so what's the hard? We say investing is the easy part, which alludes that there's a hard part. The hard part's everything else. Building the wealth management structure is really hard. Once you have that in place, it makes investing a whole lot easier.
Yeah, managing taxes and they're hard decisions. And when you're doing tax planning or estate planning, in a lot of cases, there are not many very easy decisions, and there are a lot. And I think, again, what you want to be thinking about looking for is there somebody that can act as your personal CFO that can help you make smart financial decisions, not just on investing, but everything else?
It's interesting. I'll have meetings with clients that have millions of dollars in their portfolio, and we'll spend 2 hours in a meeting and never even get to their portfolio because there's so many other wealth management issues that are top of mind and critical at that point in time.
So I think one way to maybe have you think differently about this is, if something happened, whether it's the death of a spouse or a spouse has a stroke and is incapacitated, who do you call? Who is your contact, right? Obviously, you call family first. Who's the second call? And if your financial advisor is not in the top 5, perhaps you should be looking for a different financial advisor.
Yeah, not perhaps.
Question 2, does your advisor know the right questions to ask? And equally as important, do they have the people to answer them?
Because no one has all the answers, but do you have access to people that have the answers is critical.
Right. So wealth management requires a lot of complex specialties. It could be financial, it could be tax, it could be legal, it could be insurance, it could be elder care, it could be long-term care. So you need somebody that has the expertise to do that. And are they going to ask the right questions of you? And are you going to be able to ask the right questions of them? So part of this is educational for you folks to say, if you start to go looking for an advisor, what questions do I want to ask as well? Question 3, can you show me how to align my portfolio with my long-term goals? We often say multi-generational wealth goals, which we define as parents to children, to grandchildren, and even beyond. And are you going to be able to, accomplish your goals, but equally, or we would say, get the outcomes you want, but also avoid the outcomes that you don't want.
But if you don't know the outcomes because you've never been asked the questions about what are the potential outcomes, you're not going to get good ones in most cases.
Right. And mistake prevention, avoiding mistakes, you can't put a price on it. So way back when, I happened to be a lawyer for a very short time. And what I found was that I spent all day solving people's problems. Whatever it's a tax problem or a real estate problem, they had a problem. 90% of those problems could have been solved with proper planning, of which, of course, they didn't do. So it became pretty obvious to me that the better the planning, thinking about 5 and 10 and 15 years down the road and what can go wrong, is really beneficial because we can avoid some of those mistakes. We've applied that to our practice here. So we think most advisors focus on short-term performance. Oh, your portfolio was up 3%, 5%, 10%. It doesn't matter. That doesn't help you for the long term. So what we think you should be looking for is somebody that's going to integrate income tax planning, estate planning, whatever it may be, in your overall plan.
Fourth question is, what happens to the plan when one or both of us are no longer able to manage our money?
So funny, last night I got a message from a client. Dad fell and he was in ICU. So I spoke to
So elderly dad, right?
elderly father,
Yeah.
90 years old, fell. I had been communicating with the son over the weekend. He said, yeah, call me if you can. So 8:30 last night, I gave him a call. And one of the things that was very interesting to me was the daughter's mother-in-law is a nurse. And we've helped them with their wealth management for years and years. They were actually our dad's client from years ago. But what they said to me was very interesting. They said, we have a great support system in the mother-in-law that's a nurse and us as the financial advisors and our ability to outreach to the different people. And again, we were the second call and we feel very fortunate that we're able to do it. But we think that that's adding value, not just for this family, but for a lot of families. So one funny stat we threw out a couple of episodes ago is that 70% of widows plan to hire a new advisor within a year of the spouse's death. And that's mind-boggling to me.
Not 81% like the other stat, but 70 still gets your attention as well.
What do you want to be looking for? Action. You want to know that your financial advisor understands your plans. They have copies of your documents that they can refer to. And we think it's imperative because nobody ever tells you you're probably going to have a stroke, either Thursday or Friday of next week. You had a stroke yesterday or last night or earlier this morning. And you've got to start thinking about where the advisor should be able to pull up the documents like I did this morning for this family to say, okay, mom's the agent, son is the successor agent. Mom is not going to be in a condition to handle this. We've got to get the son input, so we have to work with the power of attorney to have her resign as agent. And but we've had these fire drills with clients. We think it's really important.
It's really reassuring to clients. Like, let's take someone who's just lost their spouse, and they call us and they say, "Now what do I do?" And the reassuring part is we let them know, listen, take care of your family, take care of the things that you need to take care of. We'll get together with you in a couple of weeks, but understand we've been planning for this for a decade. So you're going to be fine. We'll make the transitions in a month when everything is calmed down, but you don't have to worry about what you're going to do next.
And how about this planning? We always think, oh, well, my advisors are younger than we are, so they'll be around after. But if you pick up the paper, there was somebody that thought they were going to be alive today that wasn't. And what if the advisor goes first? Is there a strategy or a structure or a plan in place, succession plan, that if something happens to one of us, is there a team in place like we have? We're the second generation. We have a third generation in place to handle that. I think it's
and
something
it's not just
to look
people. It's the documentation of what's happened and what's supposed to happen in the future, where the next generation can just pick up that ball and keep it moving forward. Really critical.
Question 5, what conflicts exist? So what matters, what we think, and again, what we hear is transparency builds trust. Clients like to know that we are there on the same side of the table as them, that we will act as their advocates, coaches, and fiduciaries.
And that we're aligned. our interests are aligned. The way we get more compensation is when their portfolios grow. So again, we're aligned. We want to do whatever we can do to help you build your portfolios, and we get compensated accordingly.
Well, and we're also believers in that good work never goes unpunished, and that we think clients will come out and refer us to other clients for a job well done.
Two words that are really important in this area are transparency and alignment. Clients don't wonder what they pay. They see what they pay. They get they pay a quarterly fee. The outreach of that, or the outcome of that, is they never have to wonder if we are aligned. Did we make recommendations for our benefit over their benefit? Because it doesn't matter. The fee is charged the same no matter what asset is in there.
Right. And I
portfolio.
think, so from your standpoint, the viewer, what to look for is there a clear explanation of the fees? And then will they tell you what your fees actually charge were? On our reports, we put our fees on there. This is what you paid us last year. And it's either too much or too little. If it's too much, they argue. If it's too little, they offer to pay us more. Let's talk about some real world examples. Sam, talk about maybe a failed approach to somebody that didn't have the proper planning.
Yeah, here's a common one, is one of the two spouses die. And 90% of their money is in tax-deferred assets, IRAs, 401ks, maybe even some annuities. Now the surviving spouse has to take income out of those portfolios, either mandated because they're a certain age or because they need it to live, and they're a single taxpayer. Single taxpayers pay a lot more tax, almost double than what they paid when they were married. You know, we lived that with Mom. Dad died in 2019, and Mom's tax bill in 2020 was almost exactly double what they paid in 2019. So it's what we often refer to as the someday single taxpayer risk. And if you haven't planned for it, it's too late. You know, if you just have to deal with it. And it's not just income taxes, it's Medicare surcharges. People go through the roof when they realize, because they didn't plan, now their Medicare, their medical coverage,
that comes through their Social Security.
Yeah, costs a lot more than it would have if maybe they had planned.
Yeah, and maybe here's a successful approach. A prospective client had called us and they said, we're at another firm, we're really unhappy. And I asked why, and they said, well, all we get are stock tips. They what should we sell? What should we buy? Should we buy more of this? And they were all the while looking for advice. They knew that there were outstanding matters that weren't being addressed in their portfolio. And they had questions. They didn't know the answers. They didn't know who to ask to get the answers. And we were able to go through a complete overhaul of their portfolio and more important, simplify their portfolio, but also provide them with tax planning and tax advisors, estate planning and estate advisors, wealth protection planning and wealth protection advisors.
Well, typically what happens, tell me if it happened in this case, is their questions lead to even more questions and things that they didn't think about. So they thought they had questions. They didn't realize they had a dozen of them.
Right. And you know what's interesting, when you learn to ask the right questions, the answer to question number one has three more questions, but you don't know what
Yeah, exactly what I mean.
You don't know what the answer is until it's asked. So what happened in this case is they changed advisors, they joined us, and we were able to solve a lot of the problems that they were concerned about. So when you think about, and again, we can't stress enough how important the right questions are. If you think about your past and some of the bad things, some of the mistakes that were made, go back and ask yourself, did I ask the right questions?
Or could I have asked a question that would have circumvented this whole problem?
Right. And it's all about the questions to ask. So when you look about the attributes of stress testing an advisor, there are two parts of it. Is your advisor asking you the right questions? And are you equipped to ask them the right questions? Sometimes that comes from the advisor.
Yeah.
And we think it's really, really important. It seems difficult. It seems really painful to have to change an advisor or to hire an advisor. This could be for people that don't have an advisor yet.
Again, it's work.
It's work.
It's a lot easier to just roll with what you're doing and unlikely the right outcome.
But with proper guidance, it's manageable. So what do you do next?
Have I ever formally interviewed or reevaluated my advisor? I would ask myself that question.
And if no, should you? And if yes, what was the outcome? Do you know more now? Do you have better questions to ask after watching this video? How does your advisor fit into your long-term legacy plan? Not just your investments, but we'll make very few guarantees. One of them is you will die. And so we know that's going to happen, and yet people fail to plan for it. Here's another aspect for you to think about. What if I become incapacitated? That's sometimes worse than dying for both your family and your plan.
If you die, next year your expenses are zero. If you're incapacitated, next year your expenses could be a couple $100,000. Big difference.
So, and then share these questions with your family, your spouse, most importantly. And then decide, is your current advisor supporting what you need, your needs, and that the high net worth family would have? And if you don't have an advisor, how would it help you having, say, a personal CFO?
If you weren't there, is the plan going to continue as the way it's designed to continue, even if there's even a design?
And that's why running through the fire drill sometimes is helpful. So when you think about it, you're not hiring an advisor just to manage the money. You're hiring somebody to protect all that you've built, whether it's from litigation or tax or anything else.
And sometimes you're protecting your family's ability to move forward without you.
Yeah, and we think it deserves scrutiny, and very sincere scrutiny. And when you need clarity, so that's what wealthy families do when they look at the transitions.
One of the most important topics to stress test an advisor on is planning for your surviving spouse. It's a difficult conversation. It's non-negotiable. We covered the single biggest mistake most families make in our video on protecting your spouse's financial future. Click here to watch.